So, hello everyone, welcome. Good morning or good afternoon or good evening, wherever it is that you're dialing from today. Thank you so much for joining me. My name is Mandeep Mahal and I'm one of the MBA recruitment and admissions managers for the Oxford MBA. And for today's session, I'm going to give you an overview of the Oxford MBA. So I'm going to speak a bit about the course curriculum, about the broader university, about the application requirements. I'll try not to speak for too long. I will aim to speak for around 40 minutes, and then there will be the opportunity for me to answer some of your questions. I'm also joined by my colleague Tumi, and Tumi will be in the background answering some questions. So in fact, when those questions do come to mind, please feel free to use the Q&A function and Tumi will be able to answer those questions. If I can ask that you do keep your questions sort of quite general, it's likely that they'll be answered. And so yes, without further ado, we'll get started. I am going to turn my camera off just so you're not distracted by my face and you can see the slides, but then I will be back on camera when answering those questions. So let's take you to Oxford. So when you think of Oxford, this picture comes to mind. I'd say this is very sort of authentic Oxford. So you have the Radcliffe camera which is at the forefront of the picture. And then you've got the Sheldonian Theatre, which is behind the Radcliffe camera. You can see colleges as well. You can see many sort of spires. So Oxford is known as the city of dreaming spires. So you think about sort of that medieval heart of the city, colleges. The Sheldonian Theatre, which is behind Radcliffe camera, that is where you matriculate and graduate. And it's really important to know that when you're applying to do your MBA at Saïd Business School, it's not just the business school that you're applying to. You are applying to do an MBA at a business school that is an academic department within one of the greatest universities in the world. And as an MBA student, you will become a member of a college, and this is really going to add value to your experience at Oxford. With your college, you get to spend time with students who are from all over the world, who are studying fascinating subjects. So it could be sort of within the arts, literature, sciences, and think about some of those like fantastic sort of conversations that you're going to have with them. With your college, you'll be able to join a club or a society. The collegiate system is really unique and certainly will be valuable to your time and your experience at Oxford. And I will speak a bit more about the collegiate system later on in the presentation. But then in contrast, here is the business school. So sort of very different from the previous picture. We are a young business school. So we celebrated our 25th birthday a few years ago. And in fact, you can see the business school itself. It's the building, it's very new, it's very modern. Everything that you need for your MBA will be at this building. So this is where lectures will take place. This is where our faculty are based, the Careers Development Centre. There is a library. In fact, you can see sort of the library on the first floor. I'd say it's one of the most modern libraries that you'll find in Oxford. And the school itself as well is located closely to the train station. So actually, if you're someone who wants to sort of make some trips to London, either it be for sort of networking sessions, any sort of potential interviews, very easy to get to London. You can get a train from Oxford to London in 50 minutes. So, and I would say, so you do get the best of both worlds as an MBA student. So, an MBA student at business school, new modern ways of thinking, but then really embedded in that world-class university that has its unique history and traditions. So traditionally in Europe, MBAs tend to be sort of 1 years. So I suppose versus sort of the 2 years that you'll find in some of the US programs. And there's certainly some benefits and I suppose maybe some disadvantages to that. So lower costs in terms of tuition fees and living expenses, less time away from your career. So with the 1 year program, it allows you to get back into employment without too much of a large break. And in fact, some of the conversations that we do have with candidates, they find that they are able, that is a benefit for them, not being sort of too not taking too much of a break from their career and able to get back into the workforce quicker and put the learnings that they've back into the workforce, back into practice. It is going to be an intense year. So the program is a full 12 months. So something to consider are your career goals. So what is it that you're looking to get out of the MBA? So if you're looking to make a drastic change, so let's say if you're thinking about changing your sector, your function, and your geography, so all three, which is known as a triple jump, is the 1-year program going to be right for you? We certainly have had candidates who have been able to do that on the 1-year program, but I think it's understanding the amount of work that's going to be involved. And we're happy to have individual sort of conversations and with candidates if you are sort of thinking about that 1-year program versus the 2-year program. But then for those of you, if you are considering a 2-year program, we do have a very unique program, which is called the Oxford 1+1 MBA. It's a very unique program. So it offers you 2 separate programs of study, and then combining those 2 programs gives you a very sort of unique, strong academic experience. You are gaining 2 degrees, and it is 2 degrees from the University of Oxford, so a master's and an MBA. So having sort of 2 years at Oxford gives you sort of a great experience. So if you think about the resources, the services that you're going to have, the network, it's certainly sort of a bonus to have that additional time to think about your career. So the MBA on its own is 12 months, but by completing the 1+1, you've got 2 years to really think about that career transition. It can work out less expensive than a 2-year MBA. So usually 2-year MBA programs tend to be quite expensive, but with the 1+1, and then also again to note that it is 2 degrees that you will be achieving with the 1+1 MBA. And then finally, it does come with a very prestigious scholarship opportunity that you can apply for. So the Pershing Square Scholarship, which some of you may be aware of. So as an Oxford 1+1 MBA candidate, you can apply for the Pershing Square Scholarship. It provides funding for both programs of study, so your partnering program and your MBA. It also provides a stipend towards living expenses. So it's a great scholarship that you can apply for. I'm not going to focus too much on the 1+1 MBA in this session. In terms of sort of some of the partnering programs that we do have, I would recommend having a look at the website for further details. We do have a range of different sort of partnering programs that you can partner up with the MBA. So I know some popular programs, we have the Master in Public Policy with the Blavatnik School, the School of Geography. There's a few programs there that are quite popular that we've seen students combine that with the MBA, and I'd say sort of a range of other departments as well. So I would recommend having a look on the 1+1 pages on the website. Okay, so if I spend a bit of time on this slide here, which shows you the year at a glance that you'll have on the MBA. So the MBA is a full 12 months. We have many traditions here in Oxford. One of them is that we name our terms. So for the autumn, fall term, we have Michaelmas. For winter, we have Hilary. And then for the spring term, we have Trinity. And then for the final term, I think we may have run out of names by then. We refer to it as long vacation, though it's not a vacation. You will still be working. Before you do start the program, in fact, this is something that is new for the incoming year. The program team are working on a pre-program that will start in the summer. And this is essentially like a boot camp. It's not mandatory, but it's there for those who, and we understand for some of our MBA students, they have been out of academia for some time. So if you're someone who's coming, back to study, it's giving you sort of some essentials of boot camp to get you ready to think about the year that you're going to have ahead. So, for example, if you're someone who hasn't had much experience in finance, and then you may note, so for Michaelmas term, you do have a couple of modules in terms of sort of accounting and business finance. that boot camp there is to help and support you. So that is something that will be sort of offered during sort of August, September. And then when you come to us in September, we have what we call launch for the first 2 weeks. And launch is sort of a great sort of fun 2 weeks. It's really classed as orientation, where you're getting to meet your cohort, you're getting to meet other stakeholders within the business school. We put on some great speakers for you. There'll be some sort of college dinners. So sort of a great sort of fun 2 weeks. And then after those 2 weeks, you hit the ground running with your core courses. So everything in red is a core course. So these are subjects that you'll expect to find in any other MBA program. So really giving you those fundamentals of business. So you can see you've got subjects such as organizational behavior, you've got your accounting, your marketing. So you'll work on those core courses throughout sort of Michaelmas term. And then as you move into Hillary, you'll finish up some of those core courses. And then when you're in Hillary, this is when you can start personalizing your MBA towards you. And you can do that through the electives. So we have a wide range of electives available. We have some electives that focus on strategy, finance. We have some entrepreneurship electives. We have some electives around leadership. And in fact, the next slide does sort of give you a snapshot of some of those electives, but a very sort of broad range. There are some international electives as well. So if those might be of interest to you, those electives, those international electives aren't with another school. So with those, so for example, one international elective that we do have is called Doing Business in Africa. So that would be a trip to Cape Town, and you'll be meeting, particular sort of organizations, businesses, CEOs, learning how a business is conducted on the continent. So you'll work on your electives in Hillary and then Trinity. And then as you move into the final term, you have some more options available to you. So one of them is to do more electives, which I would say is actually a popular choice among students. I think they want to take advantage of that theoretical learning that they're exposed to at Oxford. And because we have such a wide range available, they do choose to go for more electives. The other option is to do the strategic consulting project, which I would say is quite a niche project. So it's a group-based project. So you'll work with a group of students, and you're becoming the consultants for a particular client or organization. So you may be working on solving a particular problem for them, or streamlining, say, a particular sort of process. It's a great way to get some real hands-on consulting experience. And then the other option is to do the internship. So there is still an internship opportunity within the 1-year program. It is going to be a shorter duration. I believe it's approximately around 7 weeks, and it is for credit. So it does need to meet some academic requirements. So you can work closely with the Careers Development Centre in securing an internship. So if you're someone who's looking to make a pivot in your career, so either in your function, in your sector, then the internship is a great opportunity to do that. Then you'll see at the bottom, the program is complemented by a number of co-curricular activities, and these are just a few here to name. So we have things such as the Finance Lab. So the Finance Lab is a co-curricular that's dedicated to those who want to break into, let's say, investment banking, private equity. It's run by John Gilligan, who has a wealth of knowledge, resources. He's got the right connections that he can introduce you to. It's a very hands-on lab where you'll be working on particular cases. There are some competitions as well that you'll need to take part in. We've got the Consulting Development Programme, which is run by the Careers Development Centre. And I believe you can sort of dip in and out of this particular sort of programme. So if you're someone who's interested in consulting, that's a particular programme that you may wish to look into. We have the Impact Lab. So one thing that I would say, we are a school that is known for impact. We are really teaching you to become responsible business leaders. And I'd say that's really sort of embedded throughout the course curriculum. And by all means, we don't expect all of our students to go into an impact-driven role. So if you're someone who wants to work for, let's say, sort of a top global organization, and you want to make loads of profits, you want to make loads of money, great, you can absolutely do that. If anything, we believe those decisions go hand in hand. You can certainly look to do that, but then you can also think about the impact that you're going to make, let's say on your workforce or on your environment. And the Impact Lab that is run by the Scholl Centre of Social Entrepreneurship. So that's also a very sort of popular co-curricular where they have a network that they can introduce you to. There will be sort of particular sort of workshops. I know there's an impact sort of investing boot camp. So that's something that you can certainly look to get involved with. There is also the Creative Destruction Lab, which is looking at sort of science-based startups. They have a number of different streams. I'd say that there's so much on offer to you on the programme. Not only do we have sort of these co-curriculars, we have Oxford Business Networks, that are student-led networks. There are particular sort of clubs, societies, a lot available to you on the programme. And then if I just touch on the talent development programme, which is something that is run by the Careers Development Centre. And so with the Careers Development Centre, and I'll speak about their provision also later on in the presentation, but they do also host a number of different sort of programmes. So think about some of those softer skills. So let's say perhaps you're someone who wants to work on your presentation skills or negotiations or consultative selling. And there are some particular sort of programmes such as those that you can get involved with. And then this slide here, so this just gives you an example of some of the electives that we do have available. So I believe it's approximately around 45, and you can sort of, again, have a look on the website for further information. So a broad range. A couple of things that I do want to mention in terms of some of the electives. So, and in fact, if some of you have been researching sort of or been considering the programme for some time, you may have noted on the previous slide that the GoTo project, which so GoTo stands for Global Opportunities Threats Oxford, and then also the Entrepreneurship Project, which is you can see this, it's on the middle of this slide. So those projects were previously on the core curriculum, and for 2024, so if you are looking to start the programme in 2024, they are still going to be available, but they are moving into elective format. So you've got the option to choose those. For those who, if you don't know what the GoTo project is, so I mentioned it stands for Global Opportunities Threats Oxford, and the project is looking at a world scale problem and how you can look to solve that. So it is a group project. The theme changes each year. So we've seen themes, previous themes have been climate change, I think the sort of data, systems research. So actually, I suppose if we think about over the last few years, sort of COVID, so how can we look to build back better? So it's really sort of looking at a world scale problem and really sort of thinking about that problem solving and thinking about that intersection between business and society. So a very sort of popular project and still available as an elective format. And then the other project, the Entrepreneurship Project, which, so if you're someone who is interested in entrepreneurship, we've seen a number of students being able to leverage the Entrepreneurship Project. So with the project, you need to come up with an idea, a business plan, and you need to present that to a panel of venture capitalists and other senior leaders. You can work quite closely with the Entrepreneurship Centre. They have a number of sort of resources. They have a network that they can introduce you to. So, and we have seen students being able to leverage, so if they have a particular idea, they've actually used the Entrepreneurship Project to test that idea out. So, so those projects are still available, but they're available as an elective. Okay, so if I speak a bit about the class profile, so this is for our class, our current class at the moment. So class size does tend to vary. I would say that we expect a class size of around sort of 330 to 340. We're really sort of, we like to speak about diversity, and I suppose you can slice that in a number of ways. So I suppose in terms of thinking about that regional diversity, we certainly have that. So 63 nationalities are represented and 97% of our class is international. But you can also think about that from a couple of other lenses as well. I think it's really important to think about it from a gender lens. So really delighted that for this year's class, we have hit gender parity. And actually, so this is the first year that females have outnumbered the males. And I believe there's only sort of a few business schools who have been able to do that. And I think this is really something important to know. I think when future employers, of course, they are looking for candidates who are used to working in diverse backgrounds. And I think it's important to think about it from that gender lens. In terms of averages of work experience, so we tend to see students come with an average of 6 years experience. Important to note that that's just the average. I will speak a little bit later about our application requirements. I'd also say in terms of just carrying on with that theme of diversity, in terms of the professional diversity we have, we don't just attract students who come from, let's say, traditional sort of MBA sort of backgrounds. You may think of finance or consulting. We certainly welcome those candidates. But then we also have a number of students who come from different backgrounds. So whether that would be, we've seen lawyers on the programme, people from media, healthcare, not-for-profit, social impact, engineering, from the military. And in fact, I do have a slide sort of, I think it's in a couple of slides time, just to sort of showcase that professional diversity, and also in terms of the number of sectors that we do have. And this just gives you that makeup of that international diversity. So I'd say it's sort of fairly sort of spread out. There are some parts of the world that we do have sort of low representation, and we would, of course, like to see a high representation. I think one thing important to note is the Africa sort of percentage that we do have. So we do have a focus an initiative on Africa. So there are particular sort of programs. We've got the Oxford Africa Business Alliance. There are a couple of, well, there's the elective, there's the Doing Business in Africa elective. And so we always aim to get at least 10% of our class from the continent. And I think if you were to look at other business schools, that you'll see that their representation is fairly low, sort of 2 to 3%. So we always aim to get at least 10%, but I'd say sort of a very sort of broad range when it comes to that international diversity. And then just speaking again about that professional diversity. So I'll just leave this slide up just for a couple of moments so you can have a look. But we do tend to see a number of students who do come from consulting and finance. And we have seen that tech has sort of risen over the last few years. But then in terms of that sort of global industry, you can see the makeup of that on the right-hand side. So sort of a very sort of broad range. So some conversations that we do have with candidates, they think that they come from a non-traditional background and is that going to be a disadvantage to their application? Absolutely not. We certainly welcome candidates from all different backgrounds. Okay, and then in terms of the Careers Development Centre, so there is a careers provision that's provided to you throughout your entire year of your MBA. In fact, some of that support does actually come early. So generally in the summer months before you start your MBA, you'll start hearing from the Careers Development Centre. So they'll encourage you to start thinking about your post-MBA career. They'll encourage you to get your CV ready. So I know they include that in an employer book, in a CV book that they send out to employers. There will be particular sort of panel sessions that they'll invite you to. So the Careers Development Centre, they are split into teams. So we have a team that is focused on consulting. We have a team that focuses on finance. We have a team that focuses on tech. And then anything sort of else sort of sits under sort of global industry. And then we also have impact as well, because we believe that so impact is a sort of a touch on all of those particular sectors. The Careers Development Centre, they do have a sort of open door policy, but I'd say that it really is the work that you're going to put in. The Careers Development Centre aren't there to sort of help you aren't going to sort of guarantee to get you your job. They're there to help you. They've got the right connections that they can introduce you to. We do have industry advisors, but it really does work 2 ways, and it's about the work that you're going to put in. And this is some information that has come from our employment reports. This is for our class that graduated in 2022. And in fact, you can view the full report on our website, and I would recommend to do so. It's got some sort of great information on there. But in terms of the statistics at the top, so you can see in terms of our students, which ones did look to, either switch sector, location, job function, or all three. I think earlier on in the presentation, I mentioned about that triple jump. So we've certainly seen candidates being able to do that on the Oxford MBA. And then in terms of sort of which sector students go into, so we certainly see, again, some of those sort of traditional sectors such as consulting and finance. We've seen students go into tech, impact. I would certainly recommend looking at the report. It's got some more sort of detailed information on there for you to view. And then in terms of that international sort of where students are ending up sort of post MBA. So we tend to see a number of students do want to stay sort of in UK or Europe. So in fact, for the class that graduated in 2022, more than half did look to stay in the UK. So if you are someone who is looking to make a pivot in your geography, if you do want to come to the UK, come to Europe, then you'll see that the MBA the Oxford MBA has been sort of a well-trodden path for students to be able to do that successfully. Second, we always tend to see sort of North America, so whether that's usually sort of American students looking to go back to the US. But again, I'd recommend to have a look at the report. There's some really sort of useful information on there. Okay, so if we speak about colleges, so I touched on sort of colleges sort of earlier on in the presentation. So certainly a benefit to you that as an MBA student, you are required to become a member of a college. So, and this is really going to add value to experience. You get access to a diverse academic community. You get the opportunity to expand your network further. And I think that's really important to mention. So I know when it comes to an MBA, you're thinking about the network, and you're going to have a very vast network as it is within the business school, but then the opportunity to really sort of broaden that within the wider university. You'll have particular events, so there'll be a number of sort of ceremonies, college balls, formal dinners. I remember sort of speaking to an alumni who mentioned that this was the MBA where she needed to make sure she had sort of around 4 or 5 ball gowns at the ready. So and in terms of some of those dinners, so if you think about those traditional dining halls with those long narrow tables, I think the best way to describe it or refer to it is if you think about if any of you are fans of Harry Potter. I'm guessing that we may potentially have some Harry Potter fans dialing in, and also some of those colleges. Some of the Oxford colleges were filming locations for the Harry Potter films, but at those formal dinners, you could be sat next to someone who is studying a completely different subject and think about some of those interesting sort of conversations that you're going to have. You can join a sport or society with your college, and there are a number of different sports and societies that are available. And in fact, I'd say if you're someone who's into something very niche, I'd say the likelihood of it being available at Oxford, I would say it's quite high. A number of different sports. In fact, rowing, if we take rowing as an example, that's something that's very sort of big in Oxford, sort of very traditional. So you could look to try out rowing with your college. In terms of sort of the college process and how it works as when you're applying to the MBA. So if you are successful in securing a place on the programme, then you do get an opportunity to choose your college. So you get the one choice. And if you are successful in securing a place at that college, then great, that's that process over with. However, if you don't get a college that college, then I'm afraid you don't get a second choice. You will then be allocated into a college, which I would say sounds more sort of nerve-wracking than it actually is. I think it's really important to know that all of our colleges that we have are all unique. They have their own traditions, their own quirks. And I'm sure if you were to speak to students and alumni, that they would all vouch that their college is the best. We do offer support and guidance as well when it comes to colleges. So if you're at that stage when it comes to choosing a college, we are there to help you. And then if we also touch on the wider experience within the university, so the Oxford Union, so there is the famous Oxford Union, and you do get membership, lifelong membership actually as an MBA student. So you can hear from some fantastic people. So the Oxford Union attracts so many different speakers, famous people. We've had former politicians, actors, a very sort of broad range, and so the opportunity to hear from some great speakers. I also want to mention the MBATs. So in fact, I think the best way to describe the MBATs is mini Olympics for MBAs. So it's hosted at HEC Paris for European business schools, and they have traditional sporting events, so football, basketball, sort of track events. But then they also have some very sort of random sort of events as well. I know they've got trivia, they've got Battle of the Bands. I think they've had poker. And I'm really delighted to say that Oxford are reigning champions. So I believe it's 5 years in a row now that we've won the MBATs. And this picture, this GIF is an image of our class that graduated. It's our class that graduated in 2022. So they're there with the winning trophy. So so if you do come to Oxford and you participate in the MBATs, then you need to make sure that you win. And also, if you're not someone who, let's say if you don't want to participate, you're more than welcome to go and sort of cheer your cohort on. And also there's sort of, again, a great opportunity to really sort of expand your network with other European business schools. I know a lot of the students that I have spoken to, I think particularly this year, I know a lot of them did say how the MBATs was sort of a great highlight of their year. Okay, so if we move on to the application requirements, and I'll try not to spend too much time. I can go into a lot of detail about the requirements that we do have. So I think the first thing to say is that we do look at applications holistically. And I know that might be very cliche, but not one criteria holds more weight than the other. And as I go through this slide, I am going to mention, particular scores, sort of degree, sort of grades that are considered, that we advise that are considered competitive, but they aren't hard requirements. So really sort of think about your overall profile. And in fact, if you're someone who's maybe slightly sort of lower or weaker in one aspect, really think about how you can balance your profile out. So in terms of what it is that we are looking for, so we do ask for a bachelor's degree, and we ask for your bachelor's degree to be equivalent to a UK 2.1 or above. So if you're comparing that to sort of the American sort of GPA system, that works out to a 3.5 or above. We don't have a preference to which subject it is that you take, that you studied, sorry, at your undergraduate level. So again, sort of, I suppose, keeping with the theme of sort of diversity, we have a number of students who have studied a range of subjects. It doesn't have to be sort of business related. We've seen candidates who have studied, I've seen sort of music, a broad sort of range of subjects. So with your application, we do ask that you are required to upload your transcripts. That's your full transcripts. So I've mentioned, sorry, UK 2.1 or above, but again, that is just that's just a score. That's just what we say is competitive. We certainly have had candidates who have achieved sort of a lower sort of undergraduate degree, but then they've been able to sort of demonstrate strengths in other parts of their application, and that might actually be maybe the GMAT. So in fact, if we move on to the GMAT, so we do have a GMAT or a GRE requirement for the MBA. We don't waive the test, so you are required to provide us with a test result. We don't have a preference to which test it is that you take, so either GMAT or GRE. My advice would be is to look into both tests. You may find that one test may play better to your strengths or the other. In terms of your GMAT, so I know that there is the new sort of GMAT Focus edition now as well. In terms of sort of like the class median, I'd say sort of the class median has been sort of 680, but again, that's just sort of a median. And in fact, that median would show that we certainly had candidates who have achieved sort of higher scores, yes, sort of 680 plus. Then we've also had some candidates who've achieved sort of lower scores as well. And then with the GRE, I would say sort of 160, 161. So for the GRE, we look at your verbal and your quantitative scores. So I would say sort of 160, 161 on both verbal and quantitative is considered competitive. Now, with the GMAT, the GRE, I'd say certainly do look to, prepare and study for the test. There are a number of sort of resources that you can look to use. We do have a GMAT simulator on our website that you can use as practice. That's not to say that we prefer the GMAT over the GRE, because we don't have a preference. And I'd say, like with any test that you're doing, of course, you want to put your best foot forward. So do look to ensure that you're preparing for the test, take the test. And actually, when you're taking the test for the first time, it's new, you're taking it under sort of test conditions, it's going to be different to some of the practice tests that you have taken. And when you take the test, and if you're not happy with the results, your initial results that you have, and if you think actually, no, I can aim higher, then that's something that we would recommend to do. It's not going to reflect badly on you if you've taken the test more than once. We've seen a number of students who take it a number of times, sort of 2-3 times. It's all about sort of putting your best foot forward. But then also equally, if you've taken the test a few times, and if your score maybe falls sort of slightly lower than that class, that median, then it's really sort of thinking about other strengths that you can demonstrate in your application. But we're happy to have sort of further conversations when it comes to sort of the requirements, and also thinking about your GMAT or your GRE. In terms of sort of professional experience, so we ask for at least 2 years postgraduate work experience. I know sort of on a previous slide, the average was sort of 6 years. I think that's important to note, that's just an average. I'd say that the experience can range from anything from sort of 2 years up until, I'd say maybe sort of 13, 14 years. I think if you're anyone who's above that, then you may wish to consider the Executive MBA. I'd say it's just really thinking about the classroom environment and who you're going to be surrounded with. If you have a sort of more significant experience, you may find that a cohort of the Executive MBA might be better suited to you. So the admissions committee, when we are considering your work experience, we're going to look at your career progression, so how you've progressed in your career, how your experiences relates to your post-MBA goals. So is it something that you're able to successfully build upon? We want to see that you've got some real hands-on experience. I'd say the MBA is going to be a practical degree, so we want you to be able to draw upon your experiences in the classroom and share your experiences with your cohort. References are important, so we ask for 2 references. We advise they can be professional or academic. Though if you've been out of academia for some time, then you may wish to choose 2 professional references. I would say, in fact, be strategic when it comes to selecting your referees. You want to select people who know you well, who are able to comment on your strengths, on your abilities, who are going to be an advocate for you in your application. A popular question that we do get is in terms of think about sort of maybe the job title of your referee. So let's say if you were to ask the CEO or a senior manager within your organization to write you a reference, is that going to hold more weight? Well, if they don't know you well, and if they're not able to comment on your strengths, if they're not able to give the admissions committee sort of some examples, then no, it's not going to hold more weight. I would say really think about the relationship that you have with your referee. You want to select people who do know you well, who are able to comment on your strengths, on your abilities, who are able to give some clear examples of who it is that you are. And then in terms of sort of supporting statements, so there is the one essay question that you have within your application. It's a very sort of broad question. The question is there anything that you'd like to make the admissions committee aware of that's not been captured in your application? So this is a great opportunity for you to say anything that you would like to. So some examples could be to address, let's say, an achievement that you've had within your professional experience, or maybe your academic experience, or it may even be a personal experience. You may find that the application is very professionally focused, and you may wish to use that space to tell us something about you, about a hobby that you have, a passion, an interest, a story. We have seen some candidates use it if they feel they have a shortcoming in their profile, a weakness, then they've used it to address that. It's entirely up to you what you use that space for. There is a word limit on there, which is 250 words. So quite a tight space when you think about it, but still a great opportunity for you to say anything that you would like to. There is also the career development plan that you need to complete in the application. And in fact, when you open up this section in the application, you'll see the questions, and you'll note actually those questions they've designed to be quite reflective actually, so they'll get you thinking in terms of what it is that you want to do post MBA. But with the career plan, so because it is a 1-year program, the admissions committee do want to see what it is that you want to do post MBA. So we want to see that you're going to be successful. So those questions in that career plan are really asking you in terms of what is it that you want to do post MBA? How is the Oxford MBA going to help you achieve your goals? What preparation is it that you've already started to do or that you're going to do to ensure that you're going to be successful? The professional experiences that you already have, how is that something that you're able to build upon? And then also, if you are unsuccessful in your immediate sort of short-term career goals, have you thought about a contingency plan? What is your plan B? So a really sort of important and vital part of your application, because it is a 1-year program. And then I'll go back onto sort of the online assessment in a moment, but in terms of the English language proficiency, so if you are someone who is a national of a non-English speaking country, then you will need to demonstrate your proficiency in your application. We do offer some waivers. So we do offer an academic and a professional waiver. The academic waiver that we do provide is that you need to have completed a degree, so either a bachelor's or a master's degree, and the median instruction of that degree needs to have been in English, and it needs to have been completed no more than 2 years of the date of the course start date that you're applying to. So actually, given sort of the MBA and the requirements that we have with the 2 years postgraduate work experience, we do find a number of students are unfortunately no longer eligible for that academic waiver. We do offer professional waivers though. So if you're someone who uses English in your day-to-day sort of working life, then you're able to write a statement. So it's a statement that needs to come from you, just outlining your experience of using English. So if you think about some of those the components that make up an English language test, so speaking, writing, listening and reading, you're just required to write a statement just outlining how you use English in your day-to-day life. If none of those waivers are applicable to you, then you will need to take an English language test. And we do accept sort of TOEFL and IELTS. And in fact, I'd recommend sort of going on to the FAQs on our website, which gives you sort of further information. And then just very quickly, if I just speak briefly about the online assessment. So when you complete your application, so in terms, if we refer to it as your written application, so that's uploading your transcripts, your GMAT or your GRE, your essay questions, your references. And when you do submit your application, you will then receive a link to complete the online assessment. You usually receive that link within 24 hours. And with the online assessment, it comprises of 4 questions, 3 video questions, and 1 written question. So the way it works is that you'll see the question, you'll have a small time frame to gather yourself, prepare your answer, and then the video will start recording and you'll be on camera answering that question within a short time limit that has been set. The first 2 questions are the same for everyone. They are motivational questions. So questions behind why is it that you are considering the MBA and why the Oxford MBA. So those questions shouldn't be too surprising. And then the third question will be randomly selected. It will be competency based. So gives you the opportunity to bring in some real life examples. I'd say they are very sort of typical work-based scenario questions. So questions that you expect to get in an interview. Questions that are designed to see how you're able to think quickly. And then the final question, the written question, that can also be a very sort of randomly selected question. And again, for that, we are assessing how you're able to react quickly, but then also how you're framing your point or your argument to the question that's being asked. Now, with the online assessment, you don't need to go in sort of straight away and complete that assessment. There is the opportunity to practice. There are some practice sessions, so you can get used to being on used to the platform, being on camera, watching yourself, hearing yourself back, and those practice answers that you do record will just be for you. But then when it comes to the live assessment, we only get that one, you only get that one take. So do take advantage of those practice sessions. And also when it comes to your application, and in fact, I think the next slide is actually going to be on deadlines, but your application and your online assessment does need to be submitted by the particular sort of stage deadline in order for your application to be considered. So yeah, so moving on to deadlines. So applications are still open for 2024, and we have one deadline remaining in the cycle. A popular question that we do get is, what are the differences between the stages, and is there a benefit of applying early? I suppose, yes, to some extent there is a benefit of applying early. I suppose if we think about right at the start of the cycle, that's when we have all of our places are available. And then it does get competitive as we move sort of through each stage. There are places available in stage 3. So if you are considering 2024, then yes, I encourage you to really think about your putting in a strong application. I always say it's all about putting in that strong application. Don't force your application in early if it's not ready, because you know you can only apply sort of once in the cycle. So and actually, let's just say as an example, if any of you are considering 2025 and you aim to submit an application in stage 1 for 2025, but you're not successful, you can't apply again in any of the other sort of remaining stages. It would be sort of the following year that you'd be able to resubmit an application. But there are places available in stage 3. So so for anyone who is starting in, who is considering sort of stage 3, really sort of think about putting in a strong application. Okay, and just speak a bit about funding. Apologies, I know I have gone over time and I do want to sort of have some time to answer some of your questions, but encourage you to think about funding on the programme. We do have a number of scholarships that you can be considered for. Majority of our scholarships are merit-based, so the committee will be looking at the strength of your application. There are also external sort of funding that you could look at, and Prodigy Finance has been mentioned there, but there are a number of other sort of external loan providers. And then we also do see some students who come with sort of company sponsorship as well. And there are sort of some further information about sort of scholarships and funding on the website. And then just finally, I'm going to sort of close the presentation with this quote from our dean, which just emphasize sort of the focus that we do have on impact and that intersection between business and society. Okay, so thank you so much for listening to me. So I'm just going to come back on camera and I'm going to try and answer as many questions that I can in the time remaining. So, right, okay, let me say first question. So as far as I know, candidates need to have at least 2 years of work experience to apply for your MBA. My case is quite non-traditional. In the past, I studied undergraduate, but then decided to postpone at the end of my 3rd year. Then I started working as a full-time employee in the next 4 years. Last year, I went back to university to finish my undergrad, and I will graduate this August. Will my work experience of 4 years, as mentioned, be qualified for the application, or do I need 2 more years of working after my graduation? Oh, good question. So I'd say that it is postgraduate work experience that we do ask for. So yeah, so I would recommend in terms of sort of weight holding out to have at least sort of that 2 years sort of work experience. I'm not sure who's, so the question, it's been anonymous, but potentially what you might want to do is if you want to send your CV to us, in fact, if I go on to the next slide, our email address is on there. So if you do want to send your question, your CV to us, we can sort of have a look at that in a bit more detail. Okay, so right, apologies. I've just seen a question in terms of sort of the stage deadline. So oh, I think that question's gone now. But in terms of okay, if so, let's say if you were to apply in round three for 2024, so round three's deadline is the 20th of March. So if you are unsuccessful, then no, that doesn't mean that you can't apply again. You can apply again for the following sort of intake, which is 2025. What I meant was, let's say if you are aiming for stage one for 2025 and you are unsuccessful, you can't then apply again in for that intake. So you can't apply again for, let's say, in round two or round three. It's the following intake that you would need to sort of, that you'll be eligible to submit an application for. I hope that's clarified that question. Okay, this is a good question from Aaron. So thank you, Aaron, for your question. So beyond clear metrics like one's academic records, what makes a memorable application stand out? So I think, yes, aside from, I've spoken about the entry criteria. I think aside for that, what I'd say makes a strong application is we are just looking for real people who are authentic, people who are curious, who are open-minded, who want to learn. People who are going to be sort of collaborative, and also people who think in terms of thinking about that potential that you have. Are you somebody who's going to be a future leader? And I would say really sort of think about demonstrating that in your application. Do look to get your application to tell a story. It is, and I know I've mentioned it a couple of times now in terms of that holistic approach, but it is very much sort of holistic that we are going to be looking at. Okay, in terms of sort of what kind of profiles will get scholarships. So actually you can have a look at some of the scholar profiles on our website. So we do have a range of particular scholarships available. I mentioned sort of majority of our scholarships are merit-based. So the admissions committee are going to be looking at merit-based achievements. But I would recommend sort of looking on the website in terms of some of those scholar profiles. And you can see in terms of, particularly if you are looking at some of the, because we do have some sort of big scholarships. In fact, I mentioned the Pershing Square scholarship sort of earlier on, which is the scholarship that's available for the 1+1. You can view those Pershing Square scholars. Skoll is another sort of big sort of scholarship as well that we have. So you can view those profiles on the website. Um, just scrolling through some of these questions. So Noel asks, what kind of startups do students get partnered with when participating in the CDL? Well, good question. So I know there's a number of different particular sort of startups, sort of science-based startups with the Creative Destruction Lab. I can't on the top of my head think of any sort of clear examples. Um, what I would recommend is, in fact, there is a really sort of useful, there is actually an entrepreneurship sort of report that is available on the website. In fact, that might be something that we can look to try and get and to pop into the chat. So, which has some really sort of useful information about entrepreneurship. So, in fact, let me see if I can sort of get that up for you now. Because I would recommend it's a really sort of a very useful report that does have. Let's see if I can find it. Okay, I'm struggling to find that, but that is available sort of on the website. So I would recommend sort of having a look at that, and that does have um some further information. Okay, so I think we've just got time for one more question. So Thea's question, if I have a Master of Science degree in business already, does it support my application? So if you do have, so in terms of sort of your academic sort of background, we certainly have candidates who do have a master's degree as well. So yes, you are required to upload copies of all of your transcripts. So that would be sort of bachelor's and master's degree. The admissions committee will take into consideration as well your master's degree. Important to note that we don't look at it in replacement of your undergraduate degree. So let's just say as an example, if your undergraduate degree GPA was slightly lower, but you had a master's degree that was sort of a higher GPA, we won't look at that instead of that. We would look at it alongside your bachelor's degree. So I hope that answers that question. Right, thank you everyone for dialing in today. I hope you found the webinar, the information session useful. The session has been recorded, so we will be sort of following up with the recording. Apologies if we didn't get an opportunity to answer all of your questions. I can see that Tumi was working sort of very hard in the background, sort of answering many of those questions. You can also see our email address on the slide as well. So if there are any questions that we weren't able to answer, please do get in touch. But otherwise, thank you so much for listening. And if you are aiming to submit in stage 3, then best of luck with your application. We look forward to receiving those. And then if you are considering sort of a future intake, then best of luck. And thank you so much. Bye for now.